Hi there, it's good to see you again. Welcome back, and thanks for joining me for lesson 3, where I'm going to be talking through some common interview mistakes to avoid. Now, the first mistake that I've observed lots and lots of candidates do over the years in their interviews is going off on tangents. So I've asked them the question, and they felt the need to talk about anything and everything in their answer. And then by the time we get to the end of that, they've actually not really answered the question, the original question, too much at all. So what could be useful for you to do here is having a little bit of what I call a waffle checker. So let's say you're a minute in, a minute and a half in, just taking a little breather again and just asking yourself, okay, have I answered the question they originally asked? Is it okay to stop now? And I've covered everything I need to. That can just show a little bit of self-awareness to the interviewer as well. And feel free sometimes to, if you're 30 seconds in and you feel like you've provided a decent answer so far, but maybe you're not quite sure that you're giving your interviewer what they're looking for, you could just ask them. You can just say, okay, I hope I'm on the right lines here and that this is answering the question. And sometimes they'll be kind enough just to maybe point you on the right track if needed, or just re-clarify the question as well. And then you can go from there. There's no harming that at all. And it's not a weakness for you just to take that pause and ask that question. And again, it just shows awareness. But what you definitely don't want to do is just feel the need to tell a long story for 3 or 4 minutes that you could have answered in a much shorter time. So just having a little check as you go along can help you avoid going off on those long tangents. Also, quite a big mistake to avoid is not being an active listener. So being an active listener essentially means that you're not just hearing the other person speak and then you're waiting for your turn to come in and talk, which a lot of us are guilty in this day and age, that's for sure. Rather, active listening is paying attention to what the other person is saying. So in this case, what the interviewer or the interviewers are saying to you. And this needn't necessarily only apply to when they're asking you the question, but also they might be talking a little bit about them. They might be going through their introduction or perhaps giving you some more information on what's expected of the role and what the ideal candidate looks like, and talking to you a bit more about the company. It can be many different things. And it's just important that you are showing that you are paying attention to this, and this can be done through little things. It can be, for example, just body language, so something as simple as nodding your head as you go along. That can just show that you're paying attention and that you're interested in what the person has to say. It could even be if they're talking a lot about the company and the role. If you're prepared and you've brought a notepad with you, just taking a few notes as well. That can really show that you're taking an active interest. And also little things as well, if they've just finished asking their question and it might be a particularly challenging or insightful question, and you could just, again, take a little bit pause and you could say, wow, that's a really interesting question. I'd just like 5 or 10 seconds to think about that, rather than just, rushing in to an answer when perhaps you could just give it a little bit of thought. So just those little things in terms of body language and verbal cues as well can just show the interviewer that you are actively engaged, and just try and stay concentrated and make sure that you're not drifting off too much as well. Asking questions back to the interviewer if you're unsure. Those can all show that you are being an active listener. The third thing here is not asking many questions. We talked about this in previous slides about the value of asking questions. So with this one, if we get to the end of the interview and you don't have any questions to ask them, or maybe you only ask 1 or 2 really basic, unoriginal questions, that's not the best look. So I would highly recommend never ending an interview with, okay, I don't have any questions, or I think we've covered everything. Even if you feel that everything has been covered, just maybe ask a question on the fly. Just maybe take 5 or 10 seconds to think of something, an original question that you can ask them. It goes without saying that can make a real big difference, for sure. So don't be that candidate that doesn't have any questions ready. The next mistake to mention here is overwhelming interviewers with too much information overload. That can confuse bamboozle your interviewers without doubt. You want to make sure that you are being concise if needed. It's sort of linked to the first point here around going off on tangents. If you do that, often they're just going to be so overloaded with information that they've not really got a sense of what you're about, or whether that you've answered the question in the first place, and they're unable to take effective notes. And I've spoken with hiring managers before who have interviewed candidates at the final stage, and they've not really got too much feedback to talk about because they've just been completely overloaded. And we're all humans; our brains can only process so much information during a given time period. So you want to make sure that you are, again, coming armed with some core examples, and that you're clear on what you want to talk about during that interview. And if you feel that you have overloaded them with a little bit too much information, just checking with them if they'd want any further clarification or ask you to repeat a certain point, or maybe you can just cover some areas again. That can just show that you are thinking about things from the interviewer's perspective as well, and you want to make sure that they're not being too overwhelmed. Now, the last one here is something that I've seen many candidates not really pay too much attention to. It's one that's not really thought about too much, and that's responding poorly to feedback. Now, sometimes after the interview has concluded, we might want to give you a little bit of feedback then and there, or you might ask for some feedback directly from us as well, which is always a good sign. And when we provide you with that feedback, we are sometimes looking to see how you react to that. Do you acknowledge the feedback and take notes and tell them that that's really useful feedback and you'll take that on board moving forwards? Or have you just gone on the defensive from the get-go? Perhaps you've not really shown too much enthusiasm for receiving that feedback. And again, I've heard sometimes from hiring managers when they provided feedback to candidates on not just the interview, but perhaps another final assessment, like a presentation or a group task, something like that, that they've just taken it in the wrong way, really. You can tell that they're someone who's not very pleased to have received that. And that's an important point, and that can sometimes reduce your chances of success in these interviews, because think about it, during any graduate program, you are going to be learning a lot, and you're going to be undertaking lots of training, and a natural part of the development process is receiving feedback, constructive feedback, right? So if you're showing already in the interview before you've even potentially started in the role that you just can't take feedback, then that's not going to be a good look. And we may well have concerns there about your ability to integrate into the graduate program and be coachable. So just be aware of that. If you do receive feedback on the fly that perhaps you don't expect, take it on board, thank them for providing that feedback, and that you found it very useful. And that could be a really good sign to your interviewers for sure.